And today's video is a request from Kent Yang, and he wanted me to make a video on how to budget for your lifestyle. So today I will go over exactly that, how to budget for a lifestyle on any income. So I don't care how much you make. You could make a lot of money, you could make a six-figure income, even like $1 million a year, or you can make minimum wage, full-time, part-time, doesn't even matter. As long as you have just a little bit of money left over after you pay all your necessities and your bills, as long as you have even something like $100 for the entire month for lifestyle, then you can begin to create the lifestyle that you want. I'm not going to promise anything extravagant or luxurious, things that you would see in a magazine. I'm not promising that kind of lifestyle because everyone has a different income. But what I can promise in this video is a lifestyle that you would be happy with, one that you can feel content and satisfied with, because lifestyle is much more than just spending money on stuff. Something I would like you to know before we get started is I like to think of budgets as 3 categories. So I think of your income as a whole circle, and I divide the circle into 3 parts, just like a pie chart. So one part of this circle is going to be for wealth building. So that would be either saving money, investing money, or paying off your debts. And then the second part of your circle is for necessities. So paying your rent or your mortgage, paying your utilities and other bills like insurance premiums for your car. And then the third part of this circle would be the lifestyle category. Now, I do not like to compromise on the wealth building category just so that I can have a lifestyle that I want. Instead, what I do and what I encourage other people to do is to create a plan for the wealth building category that's reasonable but also a bit pushy for you, one that's challenging and will get you further in your financial life, and to cut back as much as possible on the necessities. And then by cutting back on the necessities portion, you have more money to play with for lifestyle. I have never heard anyone ever say to me, "Gee, Annie, I wish I paid more for my phone bill," or "I wish the insurance premium for my car were 2 to 3 times higher." Nobody has ever said, "I wish the amount of money that I pay for my necessities were 2 to 3 times more." But everyone wants to spend more on lifestyle because those are the enjoyable aspects of life. So if you have trouble cutting back on necessities, you might want to check out my book, 1001 Ways to Save Money. Over there, I go over a ton of ways that you can cut back on necessities just so that you can maximize the amount of money you have left over for the lifestyle category. And funny thing, so right now I'm wearing this cooling scarf. What I do is I drench this in cold ice water for a few minutes, and then it gets cool and I put this around my neck. Outside right now is 90 degrees and I am not turning on my AC. We do not have central AC in our apartment because it's old, so we have to use this window unit. I refuse to turn on this AC unless it is so hot that I can't stand it or I might have a heat stroke. But right now, 90 degrees, the AC is off. Why? Because I'm trying to cut back as much as possible on my necessities so that next year my significant other and I have enough money saved up for the down payment for us to buy a condo. This is just one small example of the ways that we cut back on necessities just so we can have the lifestyle that we want, even though sometimes it might make us feel uncomfortable. In order to create the lifestyle that you want on a budget, you're going to have to prioritize and be intentional. I like to think of lifestyle as a few different categories. So here's a list of them: physical and health, personal and social, work and career, family, spiritual, financial, and mind/intellect. Something you have to understand is that money is just one resource. We can have somebody who is super rich. Let's say someone is a billionaire and money is just not an issue for this person. This person can buy as many goods and services as he wants. Money as a resource is just not a problem. There's no limit for this person. I mean, like, there is a limit. It's $1 billion, and there's so many ways to spend $1 billion, but I think in like my mind, it'd be really hard to spend $1 billion, like spend all of it. This person is still limited by something else. You are limited by this thing. Everyone, including me, is limited by this thing, and that thing is time. Everyone only has 24 hours in a day, and not every single person has the same amount of years in life, right? You don't even know when you will die. So even though there might be a list of like 1 million things that this billionaire wants to do or have or buy, this long list, this person is still limited by time, which is why it's very important for you to be intentional with what you want to create with your life, because you become and you have what you think about. And so what I want you to do is take that list of different categories for your life and rank it. I know it's hard because every aspect in that list is important. Like, you need your health, you need your education, you need family. Everything is important. Everything needs balance, but I like to rank them so that I know what is most important to me and what is least important to me, so that I could focus more on having the things that I enjoy more. The problem I see with people who do not live their lifestyles with intention is that they buy things, they just buy whatever they set their eyes on. So, they suddenly want this, and then they buy it. They see this and it looks interesting, and then they buy it. Oh, that looks really cool, let me buy this too. They just buy whatever they set their eyes on, whatever their heart desires, and they have no direction. Like, they have all this different stuff, they can pay for all these different experiences, all these different services, but I don't know, I just feel like it's not as good as having a sense of direction of where you want your life to be. It looks all glamorous and stuff, but it's just not something I envy, because I feel like life is much more than that. There's more to being happy than just buying whatever stuff you set your eyes on. I see these people, they live in so much excess, so much waste. So let me use a few examples, okay? Let's say you wanted to get healthier. Then you pay for a gym membership because that's part of getting fit. Well, instead of fully committing to that and making it a priority, because there's just so many things that you can do, right? You pay for it, but you don't fully use it to the maximum benefit. My philosophy when it comes to spending money on lifestyle-related expenses is go all out. Like, I'm not saying splurge, but definitely, look, you can buy high quality makeup. You can buy nice clothes, designer clothes that you love, that handbag that you've always wanted. You can definitely go travel the world. You can go and buy that fancy smartphone because you love technology, like the latest technology. And you can definitely have that gym membership that I was just talking about. But what I see is that people are wasteful. Like, when they buy something, they don't fully enjoy it. They don't fully get joy out of this purchase. And in order to get the full joy out of a purchase, you definitely have to be intentional about what is important to you and what would make you happy. And then you can skimp on the rest. So all the things that do not matter to you, you can spend as little as possible on them, or you could just spend nothing on them at all. The second thing to do after you have ranked your priorities and figured out what is important to you, which, by the way, that is a lifelong process, is to do a little bit more soul searching than that and figure out why it's so important to you. So get really specific as to why, and probably use an experience to like really hone it in. I don't think this is something that you can figure out ever, because the things that you find important are always changing. So the reasons as to why they are important to you will also change. And if you haven't noticed, if you've realized this, you can look back at the same experience from a few years ago and how you viewed that experience at the moment versus how you viewed it 1 year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, and versus how you view it today in the present. It's always changing. So the same experience, just a different perspective or viewpoint. And I think the same thing happens when you think about, well, why is this thing just so important to me? that thing will also change. So why do I want you to know exactly why you find something important? The answer is that you might find something important, and then there might be cheaper ways to go about accomplishing the same thing that you thought you could only accomplish on a bigger income. So I want to use my own experiences from the past as an example, because those are the only experiences I can draw from. I don't have anyone else's experiences to draw from. So in the past, I really wanted to travel the world, which I haven't done yet, but I did manage to travel around the United States. So why was it really important for me to travel? At the time, I just thought it would be a really cool lifestyle to have. I saw a lot of people on the internet, they were like nomads and minimalists, and I wanted to have this unconventional lifestyle for myself. I didn't want to have a traditional life path for myself where I go straight to college after high school and then I work a job and then I retire at 67 and collect my Social Security. I didn't want that. So when I saw people online having this lifestyle where they could travel the world and live in one country for a few months at a time, I was like, wow, that is so cool. I want that for myself. A few years into me having that dream of a lifestyle, I realized, well, the things that are most important to me about travel isn't about it being cool or trying different foods. You know, everyone travels for a different reason, right? So you might want to travel because you want to try the authentic food of that area, or you might want to travel because you want to get to know the history of an area. Well, I figured out that the reason I want to travel is because I want to meet new people. I want to socialize and get to know people who are different from me, because I figured that if I meet people who are different from me, then they will expose me to perspectives and viewpoints that are different from the ones I already have. And that is how I learn. I learn from other people's experiences and how they think. And I try to try on their perspective for myself and see if it's a good perspective for me to take on. That is why I travel. I didn't have much money at the time. I was definitely low income. I didn't get my middle class job until like 10 months ago. So how can I afford to travel on just $10 an hour income or $9 an hour income, $8 an hour income? So what I did instead of doing these like 1 to 2 week vacations that I see a lot of people who have middle class jobs doing is I would do a 1 to 2 day trip to another nearby city so that I can meet other people. And I would also do this for very cheap. So I would get on a bus. I would just buy a mega bus ticket for $5 2 months in advance, because when you do that, you can get it for $5. And I just hop on a bus with my backpack and I would go. I would meet couch surfing hosts and people who took me on tours. Like, they exposed me to different experiences. That was definitely the most important thing to me. So other things that were not as important to me. So food was definitely not as important to me. So I would go to the grocery store and buy ingredients that I could use to make food to eat for myself while I'm traveling. Something that I would do is I would make peanut butter jelly sandwiches. And I would make a bunch of them and put them in Ziploc bags, and I would eat them throughout the day just so that I wouldn't starve, because the other aspects of traveling were more important to me than food. And of course though, every time I visited a new city, I would try at least one dish. So I would be willing to pay for one dish that was what this local area was known for. So in Columbus, Ohio, when I went there, I was told that I definitely have to try Skyline Chili, so that's what I did. I know, this is like a really cheap fast food restaurant, but it's not something that I would find in New York City, so I went ahead and tried it out. I would like to use another past experience of mine to help you understand this concept even more of using the why to figure out a way to create a lifestyle that you want while on a budget. So something that's always been, not always, but has been important to me since my early teenage years is full freedom of expression. So when I was a young girl, I really wanted to be an actress, but I've always been told by my parents and guidance counselors that there's no way I could ever become an actress, so I've given up on that. I tried out music. I took music lessons when I was younger. I played guitar and violin, and I've always been told by the people around me that I can never make it as a musician, so I quit doing that. So many things that I've wanted to do to express myself, people have told me that I can't make a living out of it. So I pretty much made it my life to accomplish this, to have that expression without being limited by money or by what other people say. And many times my perspectives and my viewpoints, they are very different from how other people would think. So when I was younger, I would be told by the adults around me, my teachers, my guidance counselors, people that I looked up to, sometimes they would imply or outright say to my face that my opinion doesn't matter. And it's only now that I realized that I'm just very idealistic. And I've decided I am going to make it my life to spread that idealism to other people, because people are just so pessimistic and cynical about life. And I want to be able to inspire and empower people to think better. Something that I did was I paid $90 for a Toastmasters membership, and this club met every single week. So I made sure after I paid that $90, because $90 meant so much to me, especially when I was making like $10 an hour, to show up every single week. I did not miss a single week unless I absolutely had to. I was fully committed to what I was doing after I made this purchase, because I understood my why. I understood I really need this to become a better speaker, spreading that idealism that I have. Something else that I did, which is also very cheap, was writing. I started this blog, and in fact, to start a blog is free, but I wanted a blog with my own domain name, and that cost $100 a year. It's very cheap in the grand scheme of things. And I wanted to teach personal finance to teenagers because I wished someone taught me this when I was a teenager, because I was always so scared about money and how my financial life would turn out when I was a teenager, especially with the dream to travel the world. So I went ahead and I began volunteering for a local organization, and I went into public schools to teach these young teenagers how they can manage their money properly, especially once they start going to college and having their first job. And volunteering is free, and that is also part of my freedom of expression that I'm trying to accomplish. Something else would be dance. So I tried pole dancing classes at my local studio, and they were offering early bird classes because no one showed up to them. Everyone else had a 9-to-5 job, so people wouldn't be able to show up for the 10 o'clock class, but I would, because I had more of a flexible schedule. And those classes were only $15. And another thing that would also contribute to my freedom of expression was I learned how to sew. So the initial cost of a sewing machine, which is only $100, and then maybe a steam iron and fabric scissors, and then the recurring expense for fabric and thread. And sewing could be a cheap hobby or an expensive hobby, but I tried to keep it as cheap of a hobby as possible. And how does that fulfill my desire to fully express myself? While I want to express myself through clothes, I couldn't find the clothes that I liked in stores, so I attempted to make my own clothes myself. Or if I did find clothes that I did like, I didn't like the way they fit on my body, so I began altering these clothes to fit my body the way I wanted to, so that I could be happy with the way that I looked. So I hope through all of these activities that I just talked about on accomplishing my why, which is full freedom of expression, you can see just how knowing your why is very important to figuring out which activities and just how expensive or cheap these activities are can help you to accomplish that why and accomplish it on a budget. So if you're low income, you can accomplish that why on a budget. You have a high income, you can also do the same, of course, but of course you're always limited by time, and you have to think of these activities that you want to do, and you might not necessarily be able to do each activity. Like I did not do all of these activities I just listed at once. I probably took on one activity at a given time, or maybe two activities at a given time to pursue this freedom of expression that I wanted to do. So the message I want you to take home today is that the hardest thing when it comes to creating the lifestyle that you want on a budget isn't actually the budgeting portion, because really when it comes to budgets, it's like shuffling numbers around on an Excel sheet to make stuff work. It's very easy because it's just math, very simple, adding and subtracting. The hardest part is the question, what is most important to you? That is a very hard question to answer, and some people, they live their entire lives without ever figuring out the answer to that question, which I think is very sad. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Leave me a comment below. What is the most important thing to you? If you know what it is, this video on lifestyle and creating a budget for that lifestyle is just part 1. I am going to continue this topic with part 2 because I feel like just talking about the money aspect doesn't do this topic justice, so I wanted to expand on this topic even more, though the next topic isn't going to be on budgeting. What the topic will be is a surprise, so please subscribe to my channel and I will see you next time. Bye guys!